All right, do we have New York City?
Yes.
Matt Koenigsberg, are you in New York?
Yeah, I'm right here. Hi.
Hi, how are you? So before we get the meeting started, did you want to address the board members?
Yes. Hi, I'm Matt Koenigsberg. I'm the Department of State's Special Counsel for Ethics, Risk, and Compliance. Some of you may have gotten emails from me at some point before, but if you haven't, and I haven't met you in person or on the line there, nice to meet everyone. Basically, I'm just going to speak a little bit about a topic that's very important, ethics. We're not going to do a Q&A right now because these are very specific issues, usually directed to specific issues that arise for each individual board member. So if you have any questions after this, please reach out to me. We'll circulate my contact information to the board today. So just you can send me an email. Emails sent to me about ethics issues would be privileged. So you could write out your issue, or you could call me, whatever you feel comfortable with doing. Serving on this board, as you know, means that you are all policymakers, which means you're held to sort of extra high ethical standards in the state. With that, and that's a great honor, and of course with that comes extra responsibilities and duties and things that you just have to think about. As you know already, I'm just going to go through some things, and some of this you might know all of it. The first important thing I wanted to raise is the financial disclosure requirements. I'm sure many of you know about it. You have to do it yearly. It could be a little cumbersome. It's usually easier once you do it the first time, and then it's just checking it and making sure and revising it, making sure whatever has changed in the last year, you update it and notate it. That comes up at different dates for different people. So there's not just one date, where it's going to be due by this one particular date. But you get emails about this from JCOPE. I would recommend that any email you get from JCOPE, you open immediately and see what it says. Some of it could be, not directed towards you. Maybe they're giving a course and they wanted to tell all the policymakers about it in the state. You'll want to know about that too, but it could be something directed specifically about your need to file a document, or they have a question. So just put it, put it in your head. So when you see a JCOPE email, just open that immediately and give it a little bit of attention. So you should be getting emails from JCOPE when your FDS is due. But for any reason you're not sure or you're concerned about it, just send me an email. We could find out. I could generally find out for you when it's due, if it's due already, or when in the future you'll have to worry about it. But as a general rule, it's going to be due generally on the anniversary of when you did it the year before. Every 2 years after, I think everyone in the room has been through at least one live ethics training. If you haven't, please let me know. But after you do the first ethics training, there's a refresher course every 2 years, and that's live. So what we're going to be doing, so you might know off the bat the last time you took that course or you took the initial course. But if you don't and you're concerned about it, again, send me an email and we can make sure you find out about it. You're going to get emails about that too from JCOPE. But maybe you don't want to wait. Maybe you'd rather know. Maybe you want to calendar it so you can plan ahead, which I think is a great idea. So please reach out to me, and I'll be happy to provide you with that information. We're going to be providing an in-house ethics course for Department of State employees. And I know you're not employees, not everyone's employees. But I would invite you to that as well, and I'll make sure that you find out about it when we offer that. But in the meantime, as you probably already know, JCOPE offers these courses every month, so it's a matter of going to their website and seeing when it's being offered in the Albany offices and also the Buffalo and New York City offices. Just moving really quickly, things that every policymaker needs to think about at all times: gifts. I don't mean your high school friends giving you tickets to the Knicks game, because that's not really what we're talking about. We're talking about people that you've met, through your work, people that are in even a secondary fashion is related to your work, related to your board position. Things that definitely people that you've met through your board position, people that you're not sure why they're contacting you, you're not sure why you may have received a gift, you're not sure why they're giving you a free ticket to something. If at any time you're offered a gift and it's literally not your best friend from high school or someone that you've taken a trip with since you were 11 years old, and that's not what this is about, and you have a question about it, you want to double check and be careful, which I think you should, please reach out to me with those facts. Again, if you're more comfortable doing it over the phone, again, bless you, it's totally fine in emails like this to put out all the facts for me in an email, and if it's for purposes of getting ethical guidance, that's a communication that really no one else is going to see. It's just going to be between us. And I would recommend just sending those to me and not copying anyone. So keep that in mind. Gifts, tickets, things like that. Things you always have to worry about as a policymaker. Speaking engagements. Many of you might be asked, I'm positive, many of you are asked to speak at different events and whatnot. I think that's great. And we're not saying you can't do it. We just need to know that if any time someone's asking you to speak and it has, honestly, and this is where you need to honestly think about it, is it related to me being on this board? If it's you're the alumni of your high school and they're asking you to speak and you're going to speak about something else, maybe that's not something we're talking about. But if it's anything that someone could reasonably say, oh, you were asked to give this speech because of your position on this board, that's something and then we have to review whether, and then of course if you're going to speak about business, and nothing confidential I mean, but if you're going to speak about what it's like to serve on the board or your experiences on the board, certainly in those cases, 100%, you should put the facts in an email, send it to me, and it could be, well, that looks fine. It could be, maybe we'll ask you not to do it for ethical reasons, but everything's specific, so I'm not going to talk about it here, but keep that in mind. Public speaking engagements, because when you speak, people can impute it to the whole board. It could impute it to the Department of State, to the government. You know how these things go. So we just have to be careful because all these rules are in place to make sure that we keep the public trust, sacrosanct, and make sure that when we do things, we realize that the ramifications that the citizens take on the things that we say, and it all comes back to making sure that we have integrity in what we do. Last thing is, sometimes people's jobs change, sometimes positions change, responsibilities change. In your lives, if your positions change, when you're not serving on the board, your full-time employment, it could create a conflict. It could. So what we'd like you to do is, if you change jobs, if something significant changes, if you stay in your job but your role changes significantly, and now you have a whole different portfolio or doing something different, please reach out to us and tell us what you're doing, because we certainly want to get ahead of any potential conflicts should they arise. And there are a lot of situations where they could be dealt with. It's not just going to be, oh, you can't serve on the board anymore. That's an extreme thing. Sometimes you have to do that. Other times it could be, we just need you to recuse yourself from a particular matter or a particular issue that could be before the board. So, but it's better to not deal with these things after the fact. It's better to deal with them ahead of time, and we put our heads together and see if these things could just be dealt with easily. That's all I wanted to say. It's a lot of information. So we're gonna circulate my email. I'm gonna give my card to people who are here in New York City, but everybody else will get an email with my contact information. So I work with Linda Baldwin. I should have said the General Counsel at the Department of State on ethics. You could email her as well, but any email about ethics to her, you could also email to me or just email me. It doesn't matter. We work together. So with that, I don't want to keep you from your business. So please feel free to reach out on any ethics issues that might arise. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Is that all the pre-meeting information we need? All right, so let's call the meeting to order. Why don't we do, a roll call here, and then I'll call for, hey, Jim, want to tell everybody who you are? In Buffalo.
I'm Jim LeGrand in Buffalo.
Our crew in New York City, you guys want to tell us who you are?
Eliezer Rodriguez.
Dave Mossberg.
Ernest Delaney.
Ernita Gant.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Start us in
Dan Burnett.
Carol Fasano, Vice Chair.
Cindy Berlin,
Pam Bernard, Board Coordinator.
Whitney Clark,
Charles Fields.
Amy Pensby. Jody Delala.
Mark Mastrobino, Education Bureau.
Steve Farrell, Board Chair.
Marcy Rose.
Rebecca Jones, public member.
John Manfred,
Welcome, everybody, to the March 12th meeting of the Appraisal Standards Board. But we do not have a quorum. I was notified of that as I walked in. So there are certain things that we'll discuss but will not vote on. Correct, Whitney?
Correct.
Okay. There's a question on the floor. How many people do we need for a quorum? 5?
5.
Now that we've gone through roll call, and quorum announcements, moving down the agenda to department reports, enforcement and continuing education audits. Ernest, would you like to handle that topic?
Yes. The status of our appraisal complaint files since our last board meeting of September 2017, we've received a total of 49 new appraiser complaints. We've also, over that time period, closed 26 complaint files. For the disposition of the ones that we closed, 1 was closed due to no jurisdiction, 11 was closed for no violation, 5 was closed as a consent order in which the appraiser agreed to pay a fine and or take additional education. 5 were withdrawn by the Department of State due to no merit, and 4 were duplicate complaints that we had previously received. Our total current open caseload is 51 appraiser complaints. For the appraiser continuing education audit, we are doing a random sample of 10% of the appraisers who renew each month. So as of since September 2017, our last board meeting, we've done a total of 106 appraisers which we have audited. Of that number, 94 have complied with the audit. 4 of the audits remain pending. Of the non-compliant audits, 1 result in a surrender of the appraiser's license. 3, we signed, for 3 audits, we signed consent orders with the appraiser in which the appraiser agreed to take any education which were lacking and agreed to pay a fine. And 4, we forwarded to council with recommendation of a hearing against the appraiser. And as of this report, our non-compliance rate remains under 10%.
Are there any questions of Ernest in Albany? Any questions of Ernest in Buffalo?
No.
All right. Thank you, Ernest, for your report. Moving next under department reports, we have approval of qualifying
Do you have a
courses.
question?
I'm sorry.
No, we have a board member in New York City. I just asked whether he had any questions.
Oh, okay. Do we have any questions in New York City?
No.
Okay, thank you. Ernest, again, thank you for the report. Next, under department reports, we have approval of qualifying courses and course availability. And I'll defer to Mark.
Hello. Beginning January 30th of this year, the Bureau has began accepting applications for online appraiser qualifying education. In the past, all qualifying education for a New York appraiser's license had to be completed in a classroom setting. Schools were notified of the availability of online education, and as of this point, we've had 5 schools apply. Many of them are national providers who may already offer this in another state, and we've had 1 local school who was approved to offer them in a classroom setting, has applied for and been approved to offer them online. So it's, we did expect the national online providers to be the first to take advantage of this. And we're working through that. Marcy and myself are looking at the policies, making sure that they meet the requirement for distance education. Like our real estate qualifying courses, the online appraiser qualifying requires the successful passing of a proctored classroom exam within New York State. So we're ensuring that these national providers have a plan set forth to make this examination available to New York licensees who are taking the course, or prospective licensees rather, who are taking their qualifying education online. So these, there is availability. There are only a few schools, but again, they are big national providers, as well as some local schools and brick and mortar schools who previously did classroom are applying as well. And we hope that we'll get more applicants, but there are courses available at this time. And of course, this does also mean that in an equivalency situation, a student who has completed an online course out of state can submit that course for New York equivalency and be granted equivalency credit for such course. So we're up and running with that, and we hope that we'll get more applicants in the near future.
Any questions in Buffalo for Mark?
No.
Are there any questions in New York City for Mark?
No.
Are there any questions in Albany for Mark?
Thank you, Mark.
Almost stated. Let me drop my glasses like Senator Schumer. Break down the classes themselves. What now has to be taken live, and what now can be taken online of the R courses?
Of the R courses, all of them can be taken online. Initially, the supervisory appraiser trainee course, which is technically a qualifying course, can be used for continuing education. So that was allowed online delivery from the beginning. Now, all of the other core courses can be taken online, including the 15-hour use pack. So none of the courses are mandatorily required to be taken in classroom at this point.
The school process, and only because everything seems to be licensed there. Are the schools licensed? Are they?
Well, the schools are licensed by virtue of having a course approved. When you have a course approved, you become an approved school. But there is no specific license for the school. Just proof of legal business filing for whatever type of organization they happen to be. They have to name a coordinator, someone who's responsible for ensuring that the program is run within regulation. And then we look at the course. That's the main thing. Does this curriculum meet the curriculum as specified in the regulations? Are they using an approved instructor to teach that course? And we just make sure that they meet the actual time requirement for that course as well.
Thank you, Mark.
You're welcome.
If there are no other questions of Mark, we will move to agenda item 3, action items. We'll first discuss the newsletter update. Jody?
So we do have a draft newsletter. Thank you, Becky. Becky sent emailed this last night I believe, we haven't been, had the opportunity yet to look at it internally. Staff to look at it internally to kind of look at the content of it and provide comment. But we will do that and be able to share it with the rest of the board next meeting for any clarification that you need. That can be done through email as well, Becky. And then, we can move forward with that.
Okay, because this was an item that we wanted to move forward with, but we don't have a quorum anyway, so we're gonna have to get back together for another meeting. So at that point, any feedback or alteration to the newsletter itself, we can vote on then, and then move from the next board meeting to process it out. Okay, and we've had conversations as long as we're on this topic with NYSAR about allowing, distribute at least a link or the entire newsletter itself.
Yeah.
So we're not just utilizing, because I know that we don't have a list of
All the emails.
all the emails of all licensees. So we felt it was a good opportunity to do something with NYSAR and use their ability to get information out.
They have said that they will be happy to distribute it to all of the appraiser members of the New York State Association of Builders, because they have a very good email system.
I'd make a board, brokers would be something.
Brokers would be good too.
Yeah.
It's good information, period.
Jody, let me ask you a question on that topic. We no longer have to publicize people that are under investigation or that are being through the enforcement list, because now we're less than 10% on violations on our renewals, right?
Right, but we still are publishing names on our website.
Okay,
Right.
are we gonna do that within the newsletter, or just leave that on the
We
website?
can, I don't know if a decision was made, whether we would or not, but we have in the past.
Yeah, I don't think we'd be required to do the additional circulation of the information by the ASC, so I guess we would leave that up to the board, whether or not you wanted that information also included in the newsletter.
Okay. All right. Are there any questions of Jody in Buffalo?
No.
Thank you. Any questions of Jody in New York City?
No.
Thank you. Albany, any questions for Jody? Okay. All right,
Good job.
moving on. Well done. Thank you, Becky, for all your input. Appreciate that. Action item 2B, the AMC bill update and extension. David, would you like to handle that one?
Sure. So as I'm sure everyone is aware, the deadline to enact a legislative program to regulate AMCs is scheduled for August 1st, so that's coming up. As of yet, there is no current new bill that's been formally offered. However, I know that the department, through our Director of Government Relations, has been actively working with legislators as well as interested stakeholders who are familiar with the issue to work on possible new legislation we hope will be advanced. However, given the time frame and what's actually required once a bill is actually passed and voted and then signed by the governor, it's the department's belief that it'd be necessary to request an extension of the 8/118 deadline from the ASC. The ASC has notified various states that, if they want to request an extension, that they can. And so we're working towards on making a formal request so that we have enough time once the legislation is passed so that, forms can be created, databases can be created, regulations can be promulgated, everything that'll need to be in place so that there won't be any issues with ASCs or appraisers, we'll be ready to go. And so that's why we're currently working on that while simultaneously working with legislators to get a new bill. So fortunately, there isn't really anything new to report other than we're actively working on it right now.
All right. Are there any questions of David in Buffalo?
No, thank you.
Any questions of David from New York City?
No.
Any questions for David in Albany? Well, you can start if you want. You can start because I'm going to have a series of things, but I'm going to allow.
I have to say that I'm seriously opposed to an extension on this bill.
Ask him what the extension is
And,
first.
and how long would an extension be for?
We don't know. I mean, partly it'll depend on how far we're in the legislative process before we could reasonably make a determination. But hypothetically, even if a bill and everything were signed today, usually the bills don't take effect immediately. There's usually like a 90 or 120 day period, a cure period before it takes effect, depending on if it's drafted, whether or not it authorizes the DOS to promulgate regulations right away. We just believe that it's highly unlikely that there'll be a fully implemented program by that date required, and so as to not penalize the state, it seems appropriate to request an extension just until there's enough time to basically have a program in effect so that no one's sort of penalized by it. Now,
What's the period of time for the extension? Does it say in the filing, is it 90 days, is it 6 months, is it a year?
like I said, there's no date yet determined on the length of time that the state may be granted. We're still have to communicate with the ASC and then wait for a response from the ASC. So, I mean, and the other thing to note is that hypothetically, let's say that, and I'm just saying something extremely absurd now to prove the point, if they gave us a 50-year extension, if we're able to do it within 60 days, we'll do it in 60 days. The point being is you'd want the extension to protect the state.
Right.
I just want to make a comment, though. This board approved the draft of this legislation in October of 2015. That same draft is the work that the legislators are working off from. We are the last state without regulatory AMC bill in place. That's what I've been told anyway. I have not checked every single state, but when I look on the registry, we are the last state. Where New York should have been a leader, we have failed. And I'm very concerned about an extension that will keep on extending it out and not putting something in place that is for the purpose of the public trust. And especially not knowing how long that would need to be extended out. I think that it should have been worked on a long time ago. That's 2.5 years. That's a long time for it to be sitting out there and not moving. And basically the same bill with a few questions on it is the one that is out there and has the current sponsor working on it. So I just want to state my position after having worked on this since 2010.
It started 2011, 2010.
It is, it's a long haul, and it's very frustrating, and I will be the first to admit, I don't understand the process, I don't understand the delays, I'm not a politician, I'm all about public trust, and I think that we need to be advocates to move this forward in any way we can, as a board and as a department. I feel very strongly about this. And thank you for letting me speak.
I have a couple questions and I'm going to just talk for a second. Whitney, the extension, is that something that has to come back to the board to be approved? Is that just
No.
internal? Okay.
It's internal.
All right. But along the way, obviously you keep the board abreast of what's going on.
Absolutely.
Emails, so we can get at least a framework on where we're going with that. I've been around for a while, so I'm going to make this as short as I could. I will tell you that what was produced out of this, and I think I take a couple steps back. What was produced from what we have now, and the time frame it was picked up, I think it says a lot for the board, and to the fact that there hasn't been a lot of questions, and the alterations that have been suggested have been on a positive feedback. So I think what we moved forward from in 2015 was a good piece of legislation. I think we haven't had a lot of pushback. I think it appears to be a couple alterations that aren't extreme. But I will say this, in somewhat of what Carol's saying, because I have been around for a little longer, I think you're kind of talking to, we're talking, staff here always moves quickly, always responds to things. When you get to the legislative portion of this, is I think where it gets to a grinding halt. And I think it's her frustration is a reflection that, not understanding the fact that though it was there since 15, it wasn't picked up until 6 months ago. So I'm not a big fan of the extension. I will say that David, I would like to have a date request as to what our extension is going to be, so the board members know. So it's not, and don't take my comment in the wrong light. If it's a 50-year extension, it's not, better not be sitting there for 50 years. Whatever that deadline is, we'd like to meet the extension so it's done. And I know that's beyond your control, but I would still like some time frame so we can realize when this is going to be done. I can't speak to that.
Steve, I believe when we met with the ASC for their annual audit, they communicated that the longest extension they would grant is 1 year.
Okay, so we know.
It's 1 year.
At least it gives us an idea of one.
Yeah, 1 year, ASC, like 1 year.
I know it's frustrating, but we're getting there. I guess is the best way to put it. Everybody's put a good foot forward on this. Everyone's worked on this in the same framework. David, Whitney, all the board members. I thank you all for this effort. And it is what it is. And when it passes, it passes. And it's frustrating, but at least again, it shows the strength of the document we put forward. That there isn't an enormous amount of changes that they're asking for. And I know I've said this 1,000 times. That's a reflection of 4 or 5 people that traveled in a lot of different venues to get that to where it was, considering all the stakeholders, and the stakeholders now at the table without a lot of questions. So I guess that's positive out of it. Okay, thank you, David, for the update. We appreciate that.
Thank you, David.
Sure.
Are there any other questions of David on this topic? Okay. Action item C, ACS qualification changes, discussion and vote on regulations. Steve and David will be taking a vote. David, would you like to update them on the qualification changes?
Sure. So effective May 1st, 2018, and everyone in their board packages should have a summary of the information that the Appraisal Foundation put together that summarizes the changes that they put in place. But in short, they're easing the educational component for licensed residential and certified, whereas previously they required bachelor's degrees or 30 hours of college level education. They have realized that those requirements may have been too stringent, and so, as I had mentioned, on May 1st, they're going to change those requirements. In New York, when they had first made this change, which was only a few years ago, we had amended our regulations, obviously, to comply with the federal standards so as to not fall below the minimum federal requirements. And so, effective May 1st, it's going to be sort of an option of the board whether or not we want to maintain that current requirement, or do we want to amend the regulations to, again, meet the federal or the future federal minimum requirements going to be effective on May 1st. Unfortunately, since we don't have a quorum, we won't be able to vote at this meeting whether or not this is something that the board wants to consider, but it's certainly something that the board may want to discuss because there's a regulatory process that we'll have to follow once and if the board decides that we want to change our regulations to meet this requirement. And just in case anyone on the board has a question, the New York counterpart of what's provided under the federal regs, it's 19 NYCRR 1103.2. So specifically, that would be the regulation that we would need to change if we're going to change the New York regulation to meet the federal minimum requirements starting May 1st.
We'll go to the round table. Buffalo, any questions of David on this topic?
No.
New York City, any questions of David on this topic?
No.
Albany, any questions of David on this topic?
Yes.
Girls?
David, seeing that we do have a quorum and cannot vote on this today, can this be done with an electronic vote? And if so, how do we know, does it have to be 100% vote?
Yeah, unfortunately, because this is a public body, public bodies are required to meet under the open meeting laws at a, public, at a meeting that's open to the public, pursuant to notice and all of those things. Now, what we can do is, obviously subject to the board's availability and Whitney's and the staff's availability, is you can have a meeting whenever, as soon as practically possible if you want to vote. And then the vote could be a very specific vote so that you don't have to come back. So previously, the votes had sometimes been vote to propose, then you come back and then vote to adopt. But the last several regulation change, they were non-controversial. They were like the updating of the use PAT, where it's not likely the board would actually want to discuss anything afterwards. So the vote could be, take any and all necessary steps to propose and adopt this, provided there's no, substantive public comments that are received during the notice and comment period of the proposed reg. So time frame would be easier, it'd be easier to manage, but the board would still actually need to convene at a public hearing.
Okay, thank you, appreciate it. So, discussion?
Any discussion? Anyone, obviously, we're not gonna vote on this.
I guess just a little bit of feedback. Becky and I did attend the meeting where this vote was taken. And, it actually, this was the fourth draft. And it actually was overwhelmingly approved on the federal level by the Appraisal Qualification Board. And there was a lot of feedback, a lot of input from the public all over the country of why we needed to pull back. They have alternative courses to the associate's degree now also. There's going to be, there's more than one pathway to be able to become an appraiser now instead of going all the way for a bachelor. And one of the biggest discussions was that somebody could have a bachelor's degree in basket weaving and qualify, and yet they may not have underlying courses in statistics or analysis or anything like that that is really relative to the field. And now there is going to need to be core courses, no matter the associates are in certain fields that they've approved, or core courses that can be taken. So it's a well thought out plan that has actually taken the HB a long time to put together in 4 drafts. So I, having been there and hearing this discussion live, it was, I felt very comfortable in the vote, and I don't serve on the committee, and I just want to speak for how much background work went into this. And I don't know if there's any other discussion that anybody else needs to talk about, pro or con, but you can.
I just think it's a great, I think it's something that's needed. If you watch the numbers, like we watch the numbers, it's not just New York. The number of people coming into the occupation is very low, and you're gonna find a shortage, and you're finding that now with counties that are asking for waivers, they can't find appraisers, which is, another point of discussion at some point. But I think, I've talked to most of the board members individually who are in favor of it. So I can't imagine we're gonna get a lot of objection to it when we take it for a vote.
Actually, we get inquiries as board members, we've gotten inquiries, is New York going to do something about it? And I can't speak to that, of course, yet, but there's a lot of people out there that are in limbo right now. They're taking the qualification, getting their experience credits, taking the core courses that they need to really be able to analyze things, but they don't have a bachelor's degree.
So, question, either for Whitney or for David or somebody at the table who's more knowledgeable than I am about timing. What's the time period in which, I mean, if we have a meeting in,
How soon can we have another one?
how soon do we need to have a meeting so this is effective May 1st? I mean, is there a 60-day, 30-day, or some
Yeah, we
time
can
frame?
do by May, we can do that soon. There's, David, the minimum public comment period, didn't they increase it from 60 to 90 days?
They increased it from 45 to 60, I believe, or 65
45 to
now.
60.
So has this been out for public comment?
Okay, so we would need to have our board meeting. David would need to file the regulations. We need to have them open for public comment for 60 days, and then they could be adopted. So I guess the next steps is touch base with the DAA before you leave today, or when you get back to your offices and you have your schedules handy, to let her know when you can come back to Albany. In that time, Dave can finish drafting the regulations, and when we come back, we can vote to propose and to adopt the regulatory change.
And we're gonna be past May 1st. I mean, even 60 days now, we're
Yeah.
past May 1st. So-
Right. But at least if we have it out, so that we don't put it out for
Can't put it out
public
public until it's
comment
passed.
until it's passed.
Voted on.
Okay,
Okay.
so the sooner we move it.
Okay, are there any questions or further discussion? And David, thank you for a lot of information and some good updates. Appreciate that. Okay, moving on, agenda item 4, under new business, we got board appointments. For some reason, my name's there, I guess. So, yeah, I'll defer back. All right, so there's been discussion. How many open board positions do we presently have?
We have our cheat sheet in the folder. Okay, we have we currently have 3 vacancies.
Okay.
One for the governor and 2 for the assembly speaker.
We need to keep within guidelines, we have to have one more generally certified appraiser appointed to the board. Am I wrong in that conclusion?
No, you're right.
Okay. Do you have anyone that's in the pipeline?
There's been one I know of.
No, the appointments process is lengthy. If you have sent me resumes for certified generals, they have gone in and they should still be in the approval process. If you know of anybody for that position or for the other vacancies, please send a day or I their resumes and we'll get it through the approval process.
Okay. I think someone had called me on that, and I had called to have it added to the agenda. Is there anybody, any questions or comments from Buffalo or New York City on appointments, on board appointments?
No, on Buffalo.
No.
Yes.
Not lately, there were people, there's a few people that had applied years ago, and I think they just kind of dropped off because there were no new appointments made. Is our quorum based on the number of positions? So that's why we
Positions,
can't-
which is why we've been having a hard
That's why
time
we can't
meeting
make it.
for
So
more requirements.
that's what I was afraid of, and that's why when I spoke with you about having this is an important issue, and we've had vacancies for years. And, so I think that's maybe something that should be in the newsletter too.
Yeah.
We have to go 5 for 5.
You know,
5 for 6.
that if you're interested in, serving as an appraisal board member, submitting resumes for, we can talk with you about the wording on that. But if this goes out to all the appraisers in the state, just like we opened it up for regional advisors a couple of years ago, we should be opening it up for our appraisal board members and get this taken care of.
The other, and this is something I tried to drive when I first came on, was we're geographically balanced. We have somebody from Buffalo, we have somebody from Rochester, we have somebody from Ithaca, we have somebody from Utica. We have somebody from New York City. Where are we missing geographically? North Country or Southern Tier?
Southern Tier. We got Lily.
Oh, that's right.
Southern Tier.
Okay. All right, so in the process, so if you have anybody that might be interested, if you can get resumes out to staff, that would be wonderful. We can fill some of these positions. So without having this difficulty with meeting a quorum, I think this is the first time in a while we haven't met a quorum. Okay, new business. Objective B, public inquiries to board members. Whitney Clark.
Hi, this is something that Steve and Carol brought to my attention. Occasionally, board members will receive inquiries from members of the public, really on a variety of topics. Questions about licensing procedures, questions about our interpretation of the law, questions about the status of the AMC bill. If you receive any of those, please send them to me or Amy or Dea, and we'll route them to the correct party within the Department of State to make sure that we get a response out.
We've been at the AMC bill, and I'm trying to defer.
Amy and you and, thank you.
Actually, honestly, you can really send it to anybody
Okay.
who's here at this meeting. I mean, you regularly deal with at the Department of State, and we'll all make sure that it gets sent to the right person.
Perfect.
We're a pretty small division.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Whitney, for the update. At this point, public comment period, I'll do the rotation. Jim, anybody have public comment there in Buffalo? Someone hiding behind you that's there?
No. Just me today.
Ernest, is there anybody in New York City that has any public comment? There's a public member there?
No.
Okay. Albany? We have 2 public members. John? John? Come over. Circle for Albany.
Thank you for the time. My name is John Manfred, and I run a real estate school in upstate New York. I think on the footsteps of the ASC qualification changes, the board should consider reducing the licensed residential appraiser qualifications. Currently, they are R5 through R10. In order to get an appraiser assistant license in New York State, you have to complete the same licensing requirements as a licensed residential appraiser. In my opinion, I think that that's an overkill. Every other state in the country offers R5, R6, and USPAP. And when these appraisal qualifications changed back in when the market crashed, 2008, we all know that this is all just a result of that. And now we're all talking about shortage of appraisers. New York State goes above and beyond what other states require, do more, get less. And that's the situation that we're in now, is nobody wants to come into the appraisal business because the regulations are so strict. And if you have to take 154 hours of education to get a license and have a 4-year degree, where's the incentive? I mean, how many people do you know who have a 4-year degree, want to come into the appraisal business so that they can be told by an AMC how much money they make, who aren't licensed? And I think that, in my opinion, the lawmakers in New York State are holding off on AMC licensing because they see that the potential for Dodd-Frank is going to get picked apart in Washington, and that could have an effect on AMC licensing. That's just my opinion. But I think for the ASC qualification changes that we're going to vote on or you're going to talk about, I think if you're going to have that discussion, you should look at licensed residential appraisers specifically.
Also, have that category of licensed residential appraisers, the
Right.
appraiser assistant, and that goes right to.
Right.
So,
But if, with the new changes, allows somebody as a licensed residential appraiser to work for 5 years and have no violations, can take the test for license
Yep.
or for certified.
Yeah, and with those qualifications.
Can I ask a question? So John, you're talking about taking what AQB has in minimum courses, which I think is 90 hours. I was trying to look it
That's
up real
correct.
quick. Where we're requiring 150 hours here in New York State. So not only taking a look what AQB has done to reduce the experience in the college, you're also wanting the board to take a look at doing a minimum of what the AQB says for courses.
If we're going to adapt AQG
Interesting.
changes now, why don't we
Why
adopt
not make it easier?
AQG changes
So
for
what
the
you're
original?
suggesting is to
Okay.
have the assistants
Right,
mirror the license instead of mirroring the certification.
right, right.
Well,
That's
it's
what I'm
actually
saying.
reducing the courses, because
Right.
right now it's R5 through
R5 to
R11,
R10 to get
Oh,
an
10.
assistant's license.
which is
And
150
5 years
hours.
plus the appraiser, supervisor, appraiser.
So we're reducing the amount of courses.
Right, I understand that, but so,
Because not everybody goes for licensed residential. Most people are going to certified because that's where 90% of the work is.
Well, you can't do FHA as a licensed.
Right, but
Yeah.
most people are taking licensed certified, or certified residential because that's where all the work is.
Right, because of FHA, yeah. Interesting.
why don't we, why can establish,
We
we establish a subcommittee to look into the
Sure.
suggestion?
Yeah.
I mean, you can go to Vermont, take R5, R6 and USPAP, get a license in Vermont, take them online, submit them to New York State, and get an appraiser assistant license, correct?
Interesting.
Here's someone here in New York has to take R5, R6, R7,
Well,
R8, R9, R10.
We would give credit for only those courses that they took in Vermont. They would still have to complete the additional New York
In New York,
courses.
right now. And that's for appraisers.
Whitney?
I would say if you're gonna do form a subcommittee, definitely make sure that, Mark is included
Okay.
for COS. And actually, Mr. Manfred, if you have time,
Absolutely.
I can hear from his school representative as well.
Sure.
Sounds great.
I mean, if we're looking at it now and we can see that there's a shortage, then let's address the whole thing. Well, I mean, let's bring
Right.
this.
And especially if we look at the bigger picture and the topic that we don't have time to discuss today, that was the waiver situation that is happening on a national front. It hasn't happened in New York, and we don't have time to have a full discussion of that today. But this could help towards that goal of saying that we're working as hard as we can to make sure there are enough appraisers in New York State. So it just, Mark's input would be great for us.
So can I just throw in the fact that in New York State, we have the 4 categories?
Right.
If we're gonna look
That's
at
what
the
I just said.
education, why not just look at the 3 that AQB has?
Well, here's another piece of this puzzle too. Is someone who is a certified general appraiser who wants to get a license in New York State, there's a loophole in the licensing that allows people to skip over the appraiser assistance, start working as a certified general. Once they get all of the requirements, they meet all of the experience, they can take the federal exam and get a license.
Right. I will tell you that the changes that are now being offered are going to be, except there's some huge objection from a board member, are going to go through at the next meeting. And if you want to look at the other qualifications of the courses, that's fine. But I don't want to sit here for another 8 months or a year and leave that 2,000 hours, we can reduce to 1,000, to 1,500, when there's a need for us to get more people into the board. Now, we can discuss and make changes after the fact, under guidance of Mark and Whitney Hart going to handle it. The changes are being suggested now. We'll move forward for beyond the May 1st. I mean, we're
Well,
beyond that.
the changes, if you did the changes of what we're talking about as the appraiser assistant, then that eliminates that loophole for certified general, because they have to get the appraiser assistant license first
Right.
before they can start taking the certified general, because the courses are different. It's R5, R6, statistics, modeling, and finance, 15-hour USPAP, then G4, G5, G6, G7, G8, if you want to go that route. The value to the Department of State is that every one of those people are licensed, so they're collecting revenue from the license.
Right.
They have to do continuing education. They're using the certified general licensing courses as their continuing education, and it's more of a flow. It's supposed to be. Now what's going on is people are not becoming appraiser assistants. They're going for the certified general. They're fulfilling the requirements, beating the system, and the state's not collecting any revenue because you have all of these certified general assistants running around with no licenses.
But also not being supervised.
And they're not being
Exactly.
supervised.
Exactly.
Right, exactly.
So we just keep going
Exactly.
down the snake pit.
Okay.
Let's
And it's
establish a subcommittee.
it's
and
harder
there's-
for somebody who already has a license to move up into your general than it is for somebody with no license.
Most people would
Which
go
doesn't make
assistant,
any
certified,
sense.
then certified general.
Yeah.
It's just an illustration of the board. It's a living, breathing instrument. I mean, we always are looking at things and altering the board. So let's start a subcommittee with it. Let's have some conversations, see where we can improve it.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
John sounds like he wants to be a non-appraiser member of the board.
We love
Sometimes
public
we
members.
show up somewhere. Sometimes we show up there and see what happens. Okay, are there any other Public comments or concerns out of Buffalo or New York City at this point? Okay. Then our final and last item, the board members.
You didn't finish Albany.
Oh, Albany, are there any other questions?
Public comment, I just let John go first.
Oh. Becky?
Just two items that I just kind of wanted to bring to the board, just to kind of educate what's going on, because I feel that's kind of what my job is being part of the coalitions and being part of TAFACT with the Appraisal Foundation is we do have in Tennessee a small bank called Tri-State that has submitted appraisal waivers for the whole county, and we're talking Nashville, Tennessee. That's in front of the appraisal subcommittee. There were actually two banks that submitted it. One was in Oklahoma and one was in Tennessee. Oklahoma decided they didn't want to do it. We weren't sure if Tennessee was going to move forward because they needed to provide more paperwork to the ASC, the appraisal subcommittee. However, last week they submitted the paperwork. So what's happening right now is we need public comment to go to the appraisal subcommittee in regards to these waivers. And what these waivers are is allowing for a full year period of time. Appraisals don't have to be done in these counties, and they're claiming appraisal shortage, and we're talking Nashville, Tennessee area, for commercials, for residentials, for all transactions. So this is something that is a game changer. Also, too, the Senate bill is on the floor right now. If I got the numbers right, 2155, Section 102 is another item that I kind of wanted to bring to the board. What's happening with that Senate bill is they're asking for waivers of appraisals in rural areas because of this appraisal shortage that's happening out there. So we are seeing this in a federal document that's going to be a wave coming through if that's approved. NAR, the National Association of Realtors, is actually against this because of the public trust. And they felt that, oh, it's probably going to fall by the wayside. But as we know, when it hits the floor, it's a different game. And so the Appraiser Coalition and the network groups are trying to, with the Appraisal Institute, put some caveat. If it's going to pass, let's make some type of standard. Meaning if a lending institution contacts at least 3 appraisers in a rural area, they can complete the appraisal under customary reasonable fees within a 10-day period of time, then you need to have the appraisal done. So there's some kind of guideline saying, I can't find an appraiser, because that's what they're jumping up and down saying, I can't find an appraiser to do the work. We want a waiver. So this is something throughout our whole country that a lot of us appraisers are sitting here saying, guess what, guys, open up your pockets because we're going to be bailing out the banks again. Because it's putting a lot of risk. So, thank you.
I've been reading through this stuff and I've nowhere. Anybody ever think where's the banking commission on all this? Because banking examiners got to be going to lending institutions and saying, okay, let's see your portfolio loans. And they're pulling them on. Like, where's your appraisal? We don't have it. What did you base your value on? So I want to know what the mechanisms are. If they're going to base the criteria on the, on the asset.
I can answer that.
What?
So Steve's question is, how are they going to come up with a number for the asset? It's collateral underwriter. We've been feeding into the system, so they've created their own database. Us appraisers actually call it Chuck, but collateral underwriter. And that's where they're pulling the data from. So.
Just to clarify too, these waivers are not a decision of each state board. This is at the ASC level. So these requests for waivers go directly
I can't believe that the
to
board
the
members of the
ASC.
ASC,
So
the financial members of the ASC have not
Tennessee
made
got
it.
taken totally by surprise. You can watch the video of that board meeting. Totally by surprise at their board meeting when they were told about the application for the waiver and then they had no recourse and it was out of their hands. So it's just something we all feel that everybody should be aware of, and anything that we can do to make our state better and stronger, including education and trying to get more appraisers in our state. It's going to be hard to get those waivers.
Becky, thank you for the update.
Yep.
All right, anything else of anyone, anywhere? It's good to
Now,
adjourn.
Buckle, I have one question with regards to an email list for the people from the Department of State. Is there a list that can be sent via email?
Is there something that could be sent out? You don't have an email. You don't have an email list of
No.
Well, I have a,
Unfortunately.
No, not of the
No,
appraiser, of the staff of
the
DOS.
staff.
Just when you do get a question, you know who to field it to. Is that where you go, Jim, when you get a question? You know
Yes.
who
We
to
can
field it
send you
to?
a,
That's a great question.
we can send you a list of the people who attended board
Okay.
meetings, yeah.
Well, they'll get you out a list of,
I can do that.
of staff individuals, okay, with emails and phone numbers.
yeah, that'd be helpful.
I just have one more,
Damn, I was almost gone.
it's just one more little housekeeping thing, it really isn't a quick thing, but when the agendas go out, if we could have the attachments on the agendas of, most of us were familiar with these, but I'm not sure all members got them in advance. So anything that's going to be before the board, so that it can be, we could read through it ahead of time, so thank you so much.
All right, if there's not anything else, we're losing members as we go on. I will, I will call for adjournment. Do I have a second? All in favor? Aye. Thank you very much, everyone, for all the information. Good stuff.